It's HPR, All Things Considered, and I'm Dave Lawrence with the latest episode of our Off the Road interview series. Find the hours of interviews and many exclusive musical performances at hawaiipublicradio.org/offtheroad, where you can get links to subscribe to the podcast. Today, an incredible returning guest making his first appearance on Off the Road, guitar legend Pat Metheny, back with a new album, Side Eye NYC, a live collection of new tunes and reworked classics.
Nice to talk to you. Thanks for inviting me on.
You're so welcome. A big aloha and welcome back. The last time you were on with us, Pat, it was you were in your dressing room at the Blue Note Hawaii making your first appearance there. We got to chat, and grateful to have you back on the show with us. Really means a lot.
Well, it's great to be with you, and man, I envy you being where you are.
We'll get into this ferocious new record in just a moment. And first, where are you now? And is this where you've been since the crisis began?
I'm in upstate New York, Hudson Valley area. For the first part of the crisis period, I was right in New York City in the kind of the worst of it all. And then by, the fall or so, I had a kind of presence in upstate area over the years. My next door neighbor for many years, great drummer Jack DeJohnette, we've kind of wound up spending much more time up here. And now it's like we're basically here all the time.
Well, keeping in mind Side Eye NYC was recorded just before the pandemic struck. Back us up and share the story of maybe the first days, I guess, when you realized something very serious and unusual was about to happen in all of our lives, and explain how it impacted your life both personally and professionally.
Well, in my case, late February 2020, we headed off on the road because I had a new record just coming out then from this place. Mm-hmm. We headed off to Singapore, then Australia and New Zealand. In Singapore, there was starting to be on CNN a little talk about something in late February, but the Singapore promoter was like, don't worry about it. Come, it'll be fine. And we got to Singapore and we played our concert and it was a full house and it was fine. And then we went on to Australia and New Zealand, neither of which had had any cases at that point. Every day on the TV, though, it was getting more and more serious. And we then continued on from New Zealand to South America, to Buenos Aires, where we were going to play Argentina, Brazil, Chile, Peru, Mexico, then Cuba, all kind of as part of this tour. And we arrived in Buenos Aires. Everything was cool, a lot of excitement. I hadn't played there for a long time. I was supposed to meet the president of Argentina and they were going to give me some cool award or something. Wow. It's all really great. Don't worry about anything. Everything's cool. And then the next morning, I got word saying, you can't go to the president's place because he's going to give a speech. And in that speech, he closed the country. And kind of one after another, it was kind of crazy 48 hours because it wasn't clear that Brazil was going to close or that Chile was going to close. There weren't really cases at that point. They were kind of preemptively closing. But all throughout that, we're watching on TV and we're seeing, these scenes of chaos at American airports and so forth of people trying to get back in. So finally, the executive decision was made. We're just going to go home. It was looking like it was headed that way anyway. And got home, and like everybody else, everything stopped then. And we're going to attempt to do a tour now. We've got gigs booked, in my case, I feel very fortunate about this. Gigs have not been canceled. They've just been, kicked down the road, and we've been kicking them down the road a couple times already. And at least over here in the 48, it seemed like we're going to give this a shot. And anybody that's listening to this that likes music and has not been vaccinated yet, please go get vaccinated so that we can put on concerts and be musicians and, play for everybody, because that's what it's going to take.
On that note of the tour, to support Side Eye NYC, it's quite ambitious looking to see all those dates, especially during the age of COVID and now the Delta variant, which has been causing quite of a a bit of serious concern here in Hawaii. What are ways that you're approaching the road differently to protect your health? Are these all full capacity shows, and are there any requirements on masks or, as you mentioned, vaccinations?
It seems to be that each promoter kind of has their own kind of system. It's a little bit chaotic, to tell you the truth, because there is no one size fits all thing. The requirements that we have in terms of, like, if you want to be in the band or be in the crew, is that, of course, you have to be vaccinated. We're going to be super careful about everything. In a way, it fits in with my thing, which is, it's not that I'm antisocial, but I'm not exactly social when on the road. I do tend to kind of focus on the gig and really, worry about that and that alone. But fingers crossed, it's a different scene than what we thought we were getting into, 2 months ago. It seemed like 2 months ago we were all headed in the same direction.
Right.
And then now we're finding out that the, 1/3 knucklehead component of the United States that has, emerged in especially these last 5 years, is truly bringing the rest of us down with them. And that's a drag.
That's a very interesting way of putting it. And on that note of the capacity, Pat, I'm guessing that these are, as of now, most of these are going to be full capacity shows?
Yeah. As I understand it, that's true.
Wow. Well, it is ambitious, and obviously will be, and I'm sure it gives you a chuckle too, because you know how ambitious it is when you see all those.
Well, I mean, again, we're day by day, it's like we're having to make it up as we go along, and in many ways. And it's not just us, it's everybody.
Another thing that's been interesting about this time is you've been around for so long. So many people admire you and look up to you, and that's because you've made all these different connections along the way. We lost several key musicians: Lee Konitz, Ellis Marsalis, John Bucky Pizzarelli, Wallace Roney. We lost them all to COVID. Any of those names make you think of something?
Lee Konitz is one of the greatest improvisers ever. I knew Lee from the time I was 16 years old, in addition to a musical hero, a friend and somebody that I really, really loved. Lee, great cat. Wallace Roney, who's somebody recorded tunes of mine, one of the really great young trumpet players who had a real connection to the whole Miles thing that was very special. Bucky Pizzarelli, in addition to being somebody that I followed literally from the time I, got hip to what a guitar was, his son John is an important person on the scene.
Right.
John actually put out a record recently of him playing beautiful solo guitar versions of a bunch of my tunes that was in some ways a response to the fact that he not only lost Bucky, but he lost his mom a week after that. And, he found some place in a bunch of those tunes of mine to put some of his thoughts in that department, which was something very special for me. Yeah, I have to say, I am at the point in time now where there are major, significant people in my life that are not on the planet right now. Charlie Hayden was my best friend ever, and he hasn't been around for a while. Mike Brecker, recently Lyle, we kind of grew up together in a lot of ways, and my response to all that is, I feel like what I want to do then is be the best musician I can be and honor all those guys by playing as good as I can, and also to be really grateful that we all got to hang around for a bit of time at the same time. None of us are here very long. We're all just here for a second,
It's legendary guitarist Pat Metheny, and tomorrow we'll wrap it up, including Pat sharing stories about encounters with two of the greatest guitarists of all time, Eddie Van Halen and John McLaughlin. Find today's segment and the entire series at hawaiipublicradio.org/offtheroad, where you can find links to subscribe to the podcast. I'm Dave Lawrence.